Hello, everyone. It's good to see you again. My name is Dr. A.I. Zibasi, and you're on the Supply Chain Management series. Today, we are going to deal with a very interesting topic. It's adjusting distribution systems in the maximum minimum inventory control systems. So, by the end of the session, I would expect that you should be able to identify ways to adjust distribution system policies. You should be able also to describe advantages and challenges of the mass mean inventory control system. I would also expect that you should be able to describe the inventory control system that is used in the logistics management of HIV commodities, AIDS commodities, and explain the meaning and purpose of assessing stock status. You should also be able to determine the number of months of stock available at any storage level using inventory and user data. Before we continue, I want to say thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, hit that button as you watch so that you'll be notified when new videos come our way, when we post new videos. Thank you so much. So in the last session, we looked at the different types of maximum inventory control systems, about 3. We looked at the application in public health, the supply chain. And I remember also, I think we calculated min-max for the different distribution systems in a country. So what we want to do now is to look at the overall pipeline and see how we could improve it, to deliver medical laboratory commodities from the central level down to the rural clinic medical laboratory level. So what we're trying to do today is a part of the distribution system design process for a country. We want to practice it so that we could help us to understand the consideration for improved distribution systems in Nigeria. So if you want to be able to do that, the first thing you need to look at is the length of a pipeline. All right. So in designing a max means inventory control system, you should be able to first set up your initial max min policies for each level and type of facilities. All right. You should then check if the overall distribution will function properly, if the level specific max min policies are implemented. Every level, we had a central level, the SCPs, there are policies that guide each of these levels. So you need to check after setting the policies whether they will work overall the whole pipeline. Then you need to also check the total length of the pipeline that the policies at each level imply. All right. So let's look at a good example. Remember our diagram of the pipeline, the ports, seaports, central warehouse, regional warehouse, the district hospital, the district warehouse, the health post down to the clients. And you could see that this pipeline, wow, it's so long. It's about 20 months of pipeline. That means that before a material can, come from the central warehouse to the client, it could take actually 20 months, which some of the kits that we use may not last that long. So we actually need to modify this pipeline. Need to modify it. So please, what can we do to modify it? Let me hear your thoughts in the chat box. While I'm waiting for those thoughts, let's look at this. So how do we reduce the length of a pipeline? Okay, you could eliminate one or more levels from the distribution system. For instance, our HIV AIDS commodity system has only 2 levels. You don't have all those long levels. All right. So you could actually eliminate one or more levels from the distribution system, or you could set up policies that can help you reduce the max at one or more levels. Let's see how to do this practically. We are back to that pipeline again. It's a 20 months pipeline. So we could actually remove one level, to remove the district warehouse level, okay, in which case we now have a 16 months pipeline. All right. You could also decide that you will reduce the max at more than one level. Let's reduce 1 month from the central warehouse, reduce 1 month from the health centers, remove well, let's say 2 more months from the health community workers. All right. So If we do that, we now have also a 16-month pipeline. But you cannot go arbitrarily, shortening pipeline anyhow. There is a systematic way of doing this. So that is what we will learn in this session. So how do we reduce the maximum stock levels? Okay, you need to change some elements of the formulas in order to reduce the max stock level. For instance, you could reduce the review period at one or more levels. You could reduce the lead time at one or more levels. You could actually also improve the distribution system's reliability at one or more levels so that the safety stock can be reduced. So how do we do this in practice? You can see the design step. You identify your lead time stock, set your review period stock, set your safety stock, set your minimum stock, set your maximum stock, and then you get your month of stock in supply. So how do you identify your lead time stock? You have to do a supply chain analysis, know the longest time it takes for a particular commodity to arrive before it's made available for use. Then your review period is a policy decision. It needs to be taken at the policy level. You need to make a policy decision to be able to do that. Then you set your safety stock level using the formula, set your minimum stock using this formula, and then you set your maximum stock. All right. So if you have 5 levels and you set all those, you have that. So we can set our lead time through lead time stock at 2 months, review point 2 months, but we find that that's too long after going through. So you can also make a change. Changes can be made. There's nothing that is static. So let's see how we can make those changes. For instance, if you have 2 months as a lead time stock, 2 months as review period, 2 months as safety stock, you have a minimum of 3 months, a maximum of 5 months, and you have 5 maximum stock levels at 5 different levels, it gives you 25 months of stock on hand. That is too long. That is more than 2 years. So we want to make a change. We could reduce the lead time to 1 month, set the review period still at 2 months, set the safety stock 2 months. Your min becomes 2 months, your max becomes 4 months, and you have 4 maximum stock level at 5 levels. It still gives you 20 months, which is still too long. So we could now reduce the lead time stock to 1 month, still maintain it at 1 month, but reduce the review period to 1 month. Okay. Our safety stock now becomes half a month. Our minimum stock, 1.5 months. Our maximum stock, 2.5. And then if you have 5 levels, you have 2.5 of maximum stock at 5 levels, giving you about 12.5 months of stock on hand. And I think that is acceptable. So the other things that could impact our max min stock levels include the cost of products, the reliability of transportation, the roads in the country that you're using and all that, the storage capacity of the facility that is being used, your storage conditions at different levels, okay? And then the shelf life of the held commodities. Your shelf life, some of them expire in 1 year, some 2 years. So that could also determine your max min. Other things that impact the max min stock levels include your lead times, reliability of the source of supplies, effect of a zero balance of stock, the management skills of staff, the age of the program, and the accuracy of their forecasts. So why do we need to use a max min system? First of all, you want to avoid overstocking. You also want to avoid understocking. You want to minimize the amount of waste. You want to avoid the cost of emergency orders because you will still have to make full orders at your review period. You want to also simplify the inventory control decision making, as well as the consistency of maintain a kind of consistency of stock levels. Then you want to also have reliable data source from SDPs for forecasting and quantification. So those are the advantages of using a max min system. So we found out, especially from the last lecture, that there are various ways, various challenges to using each of the inventory control systems. For instance, a challenge that you may have is if you have a system with numerous levels, like we have seen in that other pipeline, then you now have a system that manages a large number of commodities. That is also a problem. And then systems that manage products for new programs. Okay, so we can see that designing an inventory control system can get rather complicated, but it is essential to have an event in order to ensure your product availability. So please, if you do have any questions about your max min and its versions and variations, please leave your questions in the chat box. I'll get back to it later and answer those questions. All right. So if you are a community, I just want to ask a little question test if we are moving forward, if we understand what I'm saying. So if you are a community health worker and you are kind of designing a system for community health workers that distribute condoms and orals, I want to ask which maximum minimum version might work best. Is it the continuous review? Is this the first ordering, or is it the standard version? I'm waiting for your answer. All right. If you said the continuous review, the variation of which I'm talking about is the 2-bin variation, then you are correct. Why do we want to use the 2-bin variation? We want to use the 2-bin variation because there are less products to distribute at the community level, and usually at that community level, you may not be able to find a highly skilled personnel. So that 2-bin variation, I had explained it before in my earlier lecture. If you can go back to the lecture 4, where I talked about the different max min control systems. 2-bin variation, have 2 cartons of like condoms. If they finish using 1 carton of a condom, they just replace a new carton. So very, very easy. All right. I would also want to ask you that if you were the designer of systems, which version would you recommend for the HIV kits and labs as the most appropriate version to use? I'm listening. I'm waiting for your answer. All right. For me, I would first eliminate the continuous review because there are too many products under that particular product for you to be reviewing all the time. Every time you use, there are too many products. So what you will want is a system that has a review period and has a minimum, okay, at that review period you can use to refill, and also gives you a gap for emergency order points. All right. So which system is that? Let me hear. Okay, if you said the standard version, then you are correct. So I've explained to you why I will not use the continuous review. All right, it is too cumbersome, too burdensome for that kind of a large program. Usually continuous review is good for programs that have very few number of products. Okay. All right. So why wouldn't you use first ordering version? Why wouldn't you use first ordering version? Why wouldn't you use first ordering? Because actually some countries like Zambia and Zimbabwe use the first ordering version. Well, like I have explained before, that the standard version has a lot of facilities that you can depend on and use, and it makes it easy to work with. It's very efficient for managing a large number of commodities, and you have a review period. Only those ones who have reached minimum, you can order for them. If it gets lower than the emergency order point, you also are able to order. All right. So do you have any questions on how we can reduce the pipeline? If you don't, let's continue. If you do, please remember to put it in the chat box. All right. So we are also going to look at a a very, very, very important part of the inventory control system, all right, and which is assessing stock status. Before that, I want you to, as an assignment, look at the SOP for TB drugs, look at the SOP for HIV/AIDS commodities, and then look at the malaria SOPs. I've already provided those materials for you in the class, so you should have all of them, the soft copies. As I said, you said had graciously provided all those things, so I've given them to you. So look at each of the systems. What I would want you to do is that, number one, determine the type of inventory control system for each of those SOPs, the TB drugs SOPs, the HIV/AIDS commodities, and the malaria SOP. Please look at them, determine the type of inventory control system that we are going to use, and then tell me some of the factors that are considered for that system, and what are the stock levels in each of those programs. What is the review period, and what type of inventory control system was used and why it was used. This is an assignment. I'm going to grade it, so you will have it ready for me in the next 2 weeks. Are we okay with that? All right. So, like I said, we'll look at assessing stock status. But before that, I think I would want to know if you know the difference between a push and a pull system. We had discussed it earlier before. Well, the difference is that the level of the system that determines or calculates the order, that calculates order quantities, determines if it's a push or pull system. For facilities that orders quantities, calculating if the issuing facility is the one that is calculating and issuing order quantities, is a push system. And if the facility that is receiving is the one that calculates and determines the order quantities, it is a pull system. All right. So let us know which of this system is used in 3 of those programs. It's part of your assignment, and it's a graded assignment. All right. So I just want to ask a question. If you maybe had like 4 crates of Coke, I think that will contain 96 bottles. I think so. So you know that we have 96 bottles of Coke, isn't it? And we know the absolute number of bottles of Coke we have. What I want to ask is that enough information for us as supply chain managers? We have 96. So 96, so what? You need to find out how many bottles do we drink per day? How long will that stock last? Those are the kinds of things we need to know. So we need to be able to assess our stock and know how long it will last in months. All right. So we need to know our months of stock. All right. So how do we determine our months of stock? All right. How do we determine how much of this do we have? The first thing we can do is called a physical inventory or a physical count. You want to actually go into the store. You want to bring out those things out. You want to open them, and you want to count each of them, and verify how many of them are there. So we can't say that a physical count is the process of counting by hand the total number of usable units of each commodity in your store or health facilities. Very note, you are there physically. It is not the one you sit in your office and keep your leg on the table and tell somebody to give you the number. You are there physically and you are counting them, and you want to know the number of usable units. There are units that are inside there that are not usable. Either they have been pilfered, or rats have entered inside and destroyed, or they are expired. Those are not usable units. You want to know how many usable units of each commodity you have in your store or health facility at any given time. So why do we want to do a physical count? Is it not enough? Our books are recording everything, so we don't need a physical count. Why do we want to do that? You want to do that because you want to actually compare what is actually on ground, the actual usable stock on hand for each commodity with the amount that is recorded in the stock card. This is life. Bad things happen. It reminds me of a story where someone said he had 100 units of a particular kit on hand, and by the time they went and opened the cartons, they found out that all that was inside there was shreds of paper. There was not even one usable kit in that 100 units. So what could have happened? Your guess is as good as mine. So that is why we need to do a physical count. All right. So also another purpose of assessing stock status is that you want to be able to determine how long will these supplies last. So you've counted the number of usable units that you have on hand, and then you want to be able to determine how long is this going to carry me on this program. So how do we find out how long our stock will last? All right. So before we get to how long do we know, do we think that our stock will last, we want to be able to ask, how long do you think, how often do you think that this physical count should be done? Well, at least it should be conducted at least once a year if you have a program that doesn't really have problems. But if you are frequently noticing that you have the discrepancies more between your actual stock on hand and the balance on the stock level, if you have frequency in, things are not matching, they are not balancing, please try and do your stock count as frequently as possible so that you try to minimize a loss, okay, of kits. All right. So when you do the physical count, what you actually get is absolute numbers, all right? But we need to know how long these numbers can last. For instance, those Coke we are talking about, if we have one crate being finished maybe every month, you will know that that 4 crates will last you for 4 months. But in another facility, you may have those number of Cokes finishing maybe 2 crates per month. So you know that that amount of Coke will only last for 2 months since it's 4 crates that is there. All right, so we need to know how long they can last. So let's get back to mathematics. So how do we calculate how long our stock will last? First of all, remember that formula we had? It says stock on hand divided by average monthly consumption will give us our months of stock. So what is your stock on hand? Your stock on hand is the amount that we have, all right, after you have done your physical count. And then your average monthly consumption will be the average amount we use in the most recent typical 3 months with data, okay? Then your months of stock tells you how long will it last. So can we use an example? For instance, if you have 100 tablets of, say, paracetamol, okay, and you dispense 25 tablets every month, so your months of stock will be 4 months of supply of tablets. Why? Because if you divide 100 by 25, you should get 4. And you should note that this formula applies at all levels. So let's do something, okay? I have data showing me monthly consumptions for February to January. So if you say you have 3,000 cycles of lofeminal in your storeroom and your consumption for the 6 months are shown below, how many months of stock will you have? All right. Your stock on hand, what is your stock on hand? What do we have from this question? We have 3,000 cycles of feminine, okay? So what is my average monthly consumption? Usually we will choose the latest 3 months, which in this case is May, June, and July. We will add this consumption data together. We'll get a number divided by 3, all right, to get our average monthly consumption. Then if we divide the stock on hand by that average monthly consumption, we get our month of stock. Do you understand? All right. So let me put it out in full. We have our formula and the definition. So we have 30,000 low feminine, and our monthly average consumption from what I showed you there was 124.3. So if I divide 3,000 by that, I will get 2.4. So my month of stock is about 2.4 months. So I also have another set of data, but there's something very peculiar about this data. You can see that May has no data at all. Can we use that in our calculation? No, because that is not like a usual thing. Probably something happened and that month is recording that maybe there was a stock out, it shouldn't have been, or maybe the program got closed or something of that sort. So what we will actually do is to choose the 3 months that have some activity. In this case, I will choose April, June, and July, and I will leave May alone. So your sum of consumption in typical is you'll be your April, your May, your June, and your July, add them together and divide them by 3. When you do that, you have 1,181. All right. So let's look at it again. Do that. So this month of stock, I will define that. So you have 3,000 low feminine, you have your average consumption of that. So what you will have is 2.5 months of stock. Very, very easy. Very, very easy. All right, good. So when do we want to assess stock status? We want to actually assess stock status regularly, especially according to how often stocks are being ordered. But plus and minus, maybe once a year. But like I said, that if you have a program where you have a problem of your stock on hand not corresponding with that in the ICC, please, you have to do it much more frequently to avoid stories that touch. All right. Then also you do that more frequently in new programs because you want to ensure that rapid increases in consumptions are not missed. All right. When you start a new program, you may find out that a lot of people are not patronizing it, but all of a sudden, maybe you treated 100 people and the people go in and, spread the word. You may actually now get 1,000 people through referrals. So you want to actually be assessing your stock status to be able to find out those kind of rapid increases. Then you also want to assess your stock status during a quantification exercise. If you do have any questions, please let me know. I want to thank you for listening so far. Please subscribe to our channel, give us a like, put your questions down if you do have any questions. Thank you so much. God bless. Bye. Okay.